Good evening to you all. We heartily welcome you all on behalf of the Vivekananda Study Circle to this special talk on the topic Swami Vivekananda, an intuitive scientist. We thank all those who are present now for their kind cooperation and willingness to take out their time to attend this lecture. Now let us start this program with an invocation for which I call upon Pranav, Rahul and Ganesh, and I request you all to kindly rise from your seats.
सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
We are glad to welcome and introduce our speaker of today's lecture, Professor T.G.K. Murthy, who has come all the way from Hyderabad to be with us this evening. I gratefully welcome you, sir, to this gathering and request you to offer flowers to the portrait of Swami Vivekananda and kindly take up your seat on the dais. Science is nothing but the finding of unity. As soon as science would reach perfect unity, it would stop from further progress because it had reached the goal. Thus, chemistry could not progress further when it would discover one element out of which all other could be made. Physics would stop when it would be able to fulfill its services in discovering one energy of which all others are but manifestations. All science is bound to come to this conclusion in the long run. Manifestation and not creation is a word of science today. And the Indian is only glad that what he has been cherishing in his bosom for ages is going to be taught in more forcible language and with further light from the latest conclusions of scientific revelations. Thus asserts the prodigious scientific insights of Swami Vivekananda in this quote. In this lecture, our guest speaker, Professor T.G.K. Murthy, will seek to uncover the other dimension of this great spiritual giant. Dr. Murthy finished his college education by securing gold medal both at graduate and postgraduate levels. After a brief stint as research scholar, he joined the then Space Science and Technology Center of ISRO in 1969 and initiated the electro-optical activities and also went on to become its director. Dr. Murthy has done extensive research activities in areas of thin film, optical technologies, and electro-optical instrumentation, and has published number of research papers in international journals, some of which were adjudged as a best in the literature. He developed number of novel electro-optical systems having applications in diverse disciplines such as agriculture, geology, defense, and space sciences, and has been honored with many significant awards and accolades. He is Fellow Academy of Sciences and is deeply interested in science and philosophy. He is keenly interested in spreading the Indian science and spirituality to to among younger generation. Being rarely inspired by the scientific thoughts and ideals of Vivekananda, he has written a book titled Swami Vivekananda, an Intuitive Scientist, which is a topic of today's special lecture. Now, sir, I request you to address us all with your enlightening talk.
Revered Atma Shraddhanji Maharaj, my beloved intellectual cream of India. Of course, this is a common word probably here from many of the people, but I speak from my heart. But more than that, you are all the people inspired by Swamiji, or otherwise you would not have been here. So, my dear friends, I am extremely happy to stand in front of you to share some of the thoughts, feelings of the Swamiji, his contributions to the science, and my own personal things that what I got benefited through the Swamijis. These are all some of the things I would like to share with you. Before doing that, I thank the Vivekananda Study Circle for giving me the opportunity or a platform to share some of my feelings. I came to know about this one. Of course, few years back, 3 years back, I was in fact invited to come over here, but unfortunately I could not make on that particular day. But I was looking forward for a day. Now the time has come with the blessings of the Holy Trinity, with the love of all of you. Today the topic, as already said, Swami Vivekananda, intuitive scientist. Probably I will dwell on the 3 words, Swami Vivekananda, intuition, science, and whether these things are they relevant. Is there any connectivity for these things? And before I do that one, let me share with you wholeheartedly, the motivation for me is that I see very crystal clear, Swami Vivekananda is a scientist for me. No doubt about it. Probably I will try to put the way I see him. That is number 1. And number 2, recently in the Indian Fellow Academy of Sciences, there was a huge discussion saying that the question is how to bring the creativity among the youngsters in India, how the creativity can be brought, what are the ways and means, the methodologies. That is the one more very interesting phenomena that what has happened. And in that one, what they said, they ultimately spot and leave the person. What they mean is that spot the talent and leave the person. Of course, all of you belong to that particular category, but over and above that one, I just wanted to add, what is that makes you much more creative than already of the creativeness that what you have within you. So this is the main thing. So, and there is also a celebration for me especially. Swamiji's 150th anniversary celebration just started. Just a momentum has come, and now up to 13 they will be going on. So if at all something that is there, only in the ears that what rings is nothing but Swamiji. What, when we close the eyes, nothing but Swamiji, it comes. These are all the things. Some of these feelings, emotional, sentimental, of what you call, I would like to share in the next 45 minutes. First slide, please. Most of you know very well Swami Vivekananda, his biography or his life I am not going to touch upon, but what I touch upon is that to become a scientist, what are all the requisite qualities that he had? Just like any scientist, you all undergo through your so many examinations and then come over here, and then in the subsequent periods you will become the scientific investigators and all the other things. Such, what are the qualifications in case of the Swami Vivekananda? To touch very briefly, he is the personification of the Upanishads, the Vedanta. What the Upanishads or Vedanta essentially they speak of, he himself, Swamiji, he said, fearlessness, strength, and then seeking of the truth. Whether these qualities he had, I think not even a single person in this audience will say he doesn't have these things. Yes, he has. Fearlessness, strength, and then the truthful seeking of the truth. And I am completely sure you will agree this is one of the fundamental requisites for a scientist to become a scientist really. Many of the people are afraid of something, but science doesn't see whether you are obedient or something. Whether science, it sees what is the truth. So that is the first quality. And he is the master of the Patanjali Yoga. Of course, you know it very well. The yoga, I don't need to dwell on this. Your yama, niyama, pratyahara, jhana, dharana, and then samadhi. And all these things, he is a master. And you know it very well. He has written books on the Chatushtha Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. And from that angle, if you see, he has seen the internal journey of going through logically, very systematically, and then see what is the truth out of that one. So Swamiji is a great Siddha Yogi of this Patanjali Sutras, and then he is a holistic personality. An integrated personality, if at all, we would like to see and set for. I don't think I'll come across a person other than Swamiji. And the Swamiji, I'll say, if you may or may not like, I use the word, he is a divine chameleon. This chameleon, you know it very well. Wherever it goes, it takes its color, it adapts to that particular thing, and it becomes into that one. He is a divine chameleon. And whatever the subject that you take, whether it is nationality, or whether it is human welfare, or whether it is socialism, or whether it is communism, or whether it is youth, any subject that you talk, yes, he is there. He is there, he is a master. There is nothing that he has left a subject which is not untouched. So from that angle, I see him as holistic personality. Of course, no doubt, he is an icon of the youth, or otherwise so many youth people would not have been here. And government of India, with all the politics, would not have declared a personality like Swamiji as a National Youth Day on January 12th. Icon of youth, no doubt about that one. That youthness he retained till his last day of the physical body. And that youthfulness is the thing that what science requires if a scientist would like to investigate of what he is doing. Yes, that requisite quality is there, and he is the inspirer of the great personalities. Any of the scientists, any of your professors and all the other things, they are not only great in by themselves, they inspire. What Swami Vivekananda has inspired? Millions of people. But I mentioned few of the things, like if today Indian Institute of Science is there, most of you know it very well, the foundations were laid by Swamiji. Because out of the dialogue between him and Tata when they were traveling, the subject has come. There was a letter from some Tata himself saying that Indian Institute of Science, yes, Swamiji, I am forming, I offer you the directorship for that one, the first directorship. But Swamiji, he is much beyond all these things, and that Tata Institute of Science created hundreds and thousands of brilliant minds that inspired in the last, whatever the years of 50 years or 60 years or whatsoever it is. And then a rebellion, arrogant, aristocrat doesn't want to bend, a personality like Rockefeller. The Rockefeller Foundation laid by Swamiji. If you read the life of Rockefeller, it is so inspiring. And the conversation that has taken place between Swamiji and Rockefeller is much more interesting. So Rockefeller Foundation, most of you youngsters may be going on the fellowships of the Rockefeller Foundation fellowships. That is considered to be one of the prestigious things that institution has been done. And there are hundreds and thousands of institutions that are bearing the name of the Swami Vivekananda. No doubt about it, but much more the challenging thing is that the establishment of the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission itself. These Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission ideals, aspirations, and life goals are based on the principles of the Holy Trinity, Sri Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, and Swami Vivekananda. And then maybe there are few hundreds, but they have created hundreds of the youth like you. They inspired. Today, all over the globe, it is not my feeling just because I am a devotee of the Ramakrishna Mutt, but generally, if you hear say, yes, here is an organization, the organization that stands for the intellectual thing, and then the services that what they're under, such an institution has been built by Swami Vivekananda. And then, like this, if I keep on saying, if I summarize these things, you yourself, you feel whether Swamiji has got the basic requisite things or not. At this stage, I'll just go to the next slide. Intuition. I'll go very deeply onto the subject later, but intuition, whether it is recognized by the scientists or not. You look at what the Einstein he says. Einstein is a great personality by himself. What he says is that the really valuable thing in creative science is intuition. But the top one you read, intuition is the master and rationalism is the slave. But what has happened, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and rationalism a faithful servant. We have created a society, the honors of the servant and forgotten the master. It is true or not? Yes, it is true. It is true. And then the intellect has little to do on the road to the discovery. Many people, they think intellectualism is the most important thing to discovery. What he says is that there comes in a leap of consciousness, call it intuition or what you will, and the solution comes to you and you don't know how and why. What you call that? By what name you call that? Probably we'll wait and see. But this is what is the feeling of the Einstein by himself. Next slide, please. What is science? All of you know very well. And you have followed that one also. You make observations. You make some logical deductions. You make some experiments. You draw some conclusions. You repeat them. And then see the logic behind that one and make the generalities and make the theories. All these things are there, step by step they go. Step by step they go. But what the Feynman probably is one more icon for all of you before you come to the IIT. The Feynman, the great Feynman. I don't think anyone has come to IIT without reading the Feynman. That what Feynman says, yes, what he says is that The test of all knowledge is experiment. Yes, this is still what they believe. And then at the end he says, there is an expanding frontier of ignorance. Things must be learned only to be unlearned again, more likely to be corrected. In science, what is happening? You make a particular theory consonant with the availability of the instrumentation, the availability of the theories and all the other things, and that you call as the truth. But after some time, your instruments are changed, and your thinking process has changed, and now the new truth comes, and then now you call it as the new truth. But what is science? Science is continuous search for the truth. But truth doesn't change. Truth must remain the same. But here, what 100 years back, what we said, is not exactly the same as what we talk today. This is what is called the relative truth. The relative truth. Swamiji, he says very nicely at particular stage, why this relative truth has come into the existence of the thing. So the science, what the essential ingredients for these things are required is that logic, reason, and intellect. These are the three domains that any scientist would like to have. Already Feynman said, or Einstein said, intellect alone is not the thing. And I tell on logic, either have illicit major fallacy or illicit minor fallacy, the entire logic. If you can reduce that one, either it is illicit major or illicit minor. Both are fallacies. So logic goes up to a certain point, but beyond that one, it will go lead to the fallacies. And what about the reason? The reason goes, yes, no doubt, reason is very much required. And of course, later on we will see. What I would like to say is that science, so far the science, the foundations are based on these three tenets of reason, logic, and intellect, whether it is adequate enough to be creative, or something else is required, or these three things are the only essential things. That's what we are going to see. Next one, please. Of course, what is exactly meant by intuition? Intuition is different from logic, reason, and intellect, which are foundations for the pursuit of the truth. It is the highest mental faculty in man and lies dormant. This intuition. It soars above the reason as the vision of the high flying eagle soars far above that of the ant crawling on the air. So it just, what this intuition, it is very difficult to put exactly these are the boundaries. Within these boundaries, it happens like this. And that what I call as intuition is very, very difficult. If we ask from the spiritual angle of the things, what exactly intuition is that? The one which gives the holistic answer for the wholesome truth, exact truth, not relative truth. The wholesome truth, the intuition gives. Nothing else. It is the intuition alone that can give the real truth. That is what is intuition. Next slide, please. Of course, I will be leaving some of these slides behind so that you can go much more. And how it happens, for some of the individuals, they will have some sort of intuitive sense. A feeling will be coming. And in their creative work, for some of the artists, some of the musicians, or somebody else and all the other thing. And then this a vague feeling, when they probe much more into the details of the thing, it becomes a reality. A reality. So intuition is the one which brings the not only the first statement I made, it gives the wholesome truth. Now I make a statement saying that it gives a creative thinking also of the intuition. Next slide, please. The great Swamiji, what he says about intuition. I don't know how many of you are aware of this one, of the Swamiji's sayings on the intuition by itself. What he says is that is the basic methodology of Vedanta. You take any of the Upanishads, you take any of the truths, they all have come out of the intuition. The basic foundation for this Advaitic philosophy or the Upanishad philosophy is nothing but the intuition of what he has said. And then it soars above the reason and supernatural. You see the beautiful words that what he has used. Science goes limited by reason, but here he says it is beyond reason. So something beyond science, if I call it, and it is a grasp on the ultimate truth through self-illumination. And it goes beyond reason, and reason with unbiased mind is the only guide to reach there. And finally he says, a small example he gives, instinct is like an ice, reason like water, and intuition is the subtlest vapor, and each one follows the other. You know it very well. From the ice to the water, water to the vapor, and all the other thing. Your instinct goes into the reason, and from the reason, you go into the intuition. And from intuition comes the creativity. So now you please put where the intuition you would like to put. That is the place of the intuition. Next slide, please. You see the time, 1895, 1893, that was the period. Swamiji, he traveled. By that time, a lot of science has taken place. All of you know it very well. The deterministic science. For this deterministic science, behind that one, there is something story also. Man, right from the beginning, he wanted to find out what exactly is the truth. Where from all this universe has come. Where I am, with reference to the universe. What is the truth behind that one? The ancient Asians or Eastern scientists, I call, they went inside and they tried to find out what exactly is the truth. And whereas the Westerners, they wanted to see outside world. Kindly remember here one nice thing. The Upanishads, they keep on saying, apart from the fear, strength, and all the other things, by knowing what, I can know the whole thing. They are very, very intelligent. Maybe, I don't know, the Eastern scholars are lazy. By just having a small bit of knowledge, they wanted to expand the whole horizon for the whole world. So they keep on saying that by knowing what, I can know the whole world. That is the one that what they tried. That is the one what Swamiji, he has seen. That is the one that what correlates. And the external world, they are going outside, the fragments they are seeing, and fragments they are trying to put them together and see the holistic thing. Can you see the sphere incomplete? Can you see any one of you? Raise a hand. I can see the sphere at a time as a whole. How many of you can raise that hand? A sphere. Nobody can see. If you see from an angle, there is something behind it. There is something below that one. But you go inside the sphere, I can see the whole sphere. I can see the whole sphere. That what exactly the Eastern science and the Western science, that is the thing that what was going on. And these disparities are there. At the time, the scientists, they said, what we can see here, and what we can repeat, what we can reproduce is the only science. The rest of the thing is not science at all. But on the other side, the Vedanta, even though it was on the highest pedestal, people were saying, no, this is all dogmatic thing. It is hallucination. People are imagining. This is the time that Swamiji, he felt. He did not see any distinction between the Eastern science or Western science. He wanted to synthesize these two. So he wanted to give a reorientation, reinterpretation for the Advaitic philosophy in terms of the scientific worlds. In terms of the scientific worlds. So whatever he spoke, the science of what we call, of course, if we trace back, yes, the roots will be there in the Advaitic philosophy, but that doesn't mean that he has not given his own hypotheses, postulations, or his own theories. He has done that one. But before that, even any scientist, even before he gives something, he will have a broad knowledge of the subject. Swamiji, he had the broad knowledge of the subject of Advaitic philosophy. From that point of view, he has seen the whole world. He has touched the one by knowing which, by touching which, he can touch the whole cosmos. He touched that. He has seen that. From that angle, he was trying to interpret. He was trying to see the Advaitic philosophy, how it can be extended to a rational mind, not as a dogmatic thing. Because you know the Westerners, they doesn't like to have anything other than the rationalism, so the rationalistic way he wanted to give. So the next slide, please. In this context, Swamiji at that time, you see, the fundamental sciences were there, the physical science, chemical science, biological science, and mathematical sciences. Of course, as the time is going on, these are getting fragmented and fragmented and fragmented, but these fragmented small things, they are all getting interconnected, again saying that it is not the fragmentation, it is only the holistic thing that what has to come. Today, only we had the physics, later biophysics, geophysics, astrophysics, so many physics they have come, but finally, similarly biology. Now what they are talking? Physiochemical biology. What a wonderful thing. So all the three are getting merged. Where the science is going, it is getting merged, it is getting merged. At that time, one of the fundamental things that found the greatest problem, the relative truth. Why this relative truth? For that one, Swamiji, he said, the infinite, the absolute, if you see through the frame of the mind of space, time, and causation, it becomes finite. It becomes relative. That is the word that he used. I repeat once again, the infinite, the absolute, seen through the mind of space, time, and causation, becomes finite and the relative. He solved the problem. And then with that one, he didn't say, stop there. He said, all these four, space, time, energy, matter, are interrelated. And then he went, some of you know well, he went to meet Tesla, the famous mathematician, and mathematician, unfortunately, could not do. But that was exactly the same thing, E is equal to mc square, derived by Einstein. See, if Swamiji had lived for another 3 years, I don't know, he would be jumping like anything, the joy. What joy on his face we would have seen. And what immortalization of the science would have become for India. Nevertheless, for me, he laid the foundations for the theory of relativity, and it is a fiction or your imagination. Next slide, you see. Swamiji, he wrote in his own words a letter. In the letter, he expresses saying that energy and force, and then he was expecting something from Tesla to happen, and he is going to meet him, something like that, which obviously says it is authentic of saying that Swamiji's mind was working and has offered a solution, a foundation for theory of relativity. Theory of relativity. Today, I claim, maybe some of you may not accept, but I claim the foundations, the roots have already been there in a potential form for Einstein of this interrelatedness. Then what he has done in physics, next one please, at that time people were feeling either It is filled with ether. And Swamiji was the first one to say there is no ether at all. His argument is that if ether is there, say for example, the molecules are there. If molecules are there, between two molecules there must be space. If space is there, how you explain that? You can't explain that. So there is no ether at all. That is his argument. And in fact, he published a paper on ether in one of the American journals. A non-scientist you call that he can publish a paper on a controversial subject saying that, yes, there is no ether. Yes, exactly in 1905, Einstein was struggling after putting E is equal to mc square. If ether is there, E is equal to mc square is not fitting. Then he said, what I will do? I will remove ether, he said. Because I could not fit into the equation, the best thing is I throw it away. Where you can throw it away? You can't throw it away. Subsequent to the experiments or the theories, they conclusively said there is no ether at all. Now you tell me, my dear young friends, Swami Vivekananda, of what he said on physics, has become a reality or not? And in this physics alone, I will call some more thing is there. Next one, please. On the theory of unity, my friend just before me, he was talking about exactly the same words. Probably he intuitively felt of what I am going to speak. So probably he put those words exactly. So this slide speaks only of his intuition, of reading my mind. So this intuitive thing, what it says is that everything is unity. There is no duality. You take the whole physics, particle physics, wave is there and particle is there. And then the two photons going outside, they are not obeying the theory of relativity, and your theory of the equation of the velocity of the light is the most fundamental thing. They are disagreeing. And then your classical mechanics is not getting applied to the quantum. Lot of dualism. Everything is dual. Everything is dual. If such is the controversy even till today, Swamiji finds a unity behind that one. How come these paradoxical things can happen? On one side you are seeing all the things. The other side, yes, he says. Whether it has happened or not, I am not going to much dwell on that one. Next slide, please. Of course, I can quote number of the physicists, but the Bohm and Perobin, their holographic mind of what they published has revolutionized the world, and especially the Perobin, he got the Nobel Prize. What it says, the hologram is like it is the entire universe you can put on the hologram. This hologram you divide into millions of pieces. The millionth of piece of each one of them contains the whole universe, contains the information of the whole hologram. Similarly, the whole universe, even though it fragmented, each fragment contains the information of the whole universe. This is what exactly Swami Vivekananda he said. And later I will come to a very interesting point of his intuitive mind. Now, this Bohm-Perobin theory has conclusively said, more or less, yes, the entire cosmos is interrelated, not only interrelated, interconnected, not only interconnected, is undivisible. This is what it is leading to. So what Swamiji has said, in physics alone, I can cite not less than 12 Nobel laureates on the utterings of Swamiji, and later these 12 Nobel laureates' works, if they conclusively put, at the end of the day, in physics I say, what Swamiji has said on theory of relativity, on theory of unity, on theory of ether, which have been pronounced intuitively, have become a reality. Have become a reality. And then I'll go to the biological sciences. Of course, Darwin, I went to Calcutta. I saw a museum, Darwin's museum. I came out and cried. I cried literally, not very many years back, very recently. I cried because after seeing the museum, you get a feeling my ancestors are monkeys and chimpanzees. That is the feeling I got. That Darwin theory, struggle for existence and survival of the fittest and the evolution, he became a demigod for the Western world, for that matter, for the entire world of intellectuals. That was the time Swami Vivekananda, he said, no, evolution is always followed by the involution. And then struggle for existence and survival of the fittest is not the right thing. The one life that passes in protoplasm, as well as the great human like Buddha or the Christ, exactly the same principle is following. It doesn't apply. The Darwin theory may apply for the animal level, but not to the human level. That's what Swamiji has said. It is a great, great revolution. But most surprising, astonishing thing for you, I tell you, my dear friends. Next slide, please. The Darwin theory has been contested, saying that the neo-Darwinism, current evolutionary Darwinism, and so many changes, madam, it changes the colors of Darwin theory. But the Darwin theory is not fitting at all. And the great Goodwin Darwin, one more Darwin, he is again a Nobel laureate. He has conclusively said, yes, the Darwin's theory cannot apply because Darwin himself, he accepted if we can come across even a single intellectual, intelligent creature which has not evolved, I will bow down saying that my theory is wrong. If Darwin would have alive today, my dear friends, I will tell he would have committed suicide. For the sense of what he said, because the Darwin's theory, it applies half, it doesn't apply for the entire universe of life. Yes, this has been conclusively done. Now I come to the latest 2010. There was one Nick Lane and William Matinot. They published one article in Nature. The surprising, astonishing thing for me is that Swami Vivekananda used the words, it is the cooperation and symbiosis that is behind the universe of life, of evolution. Cooperativeness and symbiosis. This Nick Lane and William Matinat, they say, it seems two cells were there. One cell went inside the other cell. If Darwin theory you apply, both these they will fight together and the fittest will survive one cell. But it didn't happen. The cell that went inside, it started shrinking its requirements and started giving its energy to the outer cell. And slowly in the process, mitochondria has formed. And mitochondria is the thing which is the basis for the entire life, whether it is animal kingdom or whether it is the creatures or whether it is the plant kingdom or whether it is the human kingdom. The mitochondria has come out of cooperation and symbiosis. These are the words used by Nick Lane and William Matinat 120 years back. 1895, Swamiji uses these words. And 2010, the Nobel laureate, would-be Nobel laureate, he uses the words exactly the same thing. My dear friends, you tell me, would you like to argue? Would you like to say, yes, Swamiji, he has said something? I don't think so. Then I'll come to the next one. You see, this is how they explain exactly the mitochondria formation, how the inside cell has shrunk, and then the final mitochondria has formed, the outer cell and all. Next one, please. You see the first sentence, again, my predecessor, out of one element, the whole other elements have come. That's what he said. This is what Swamiji has said. Is it true? Is it true? Yes, there were lot of dialogue. And finally, the thing is that there was one Nobel laureate, Astin, in 1925. He developed that mass spectroscopy. Although, what is that? I will tell you the word exactly. He got a Nobel Prize. That very precisely can determine the atomic weight of the molecule, these fundamental units of that one. Now this fellow hydrogen is very unique, having one electron negative and one proton positive inside. It is the first in the periodic table, and it is the first fellow which has evolved out of the Big Bang theory. It is 90% of the material of the entire cosmos. And out of this hydrogen has come the first thing, the helium, and from helium has followed the heavier metals, one after the other. So if you see one after all these things, the hydrogen is the one which is the fundamental. It has been proved undisputedly. And in this one again, there were 3 Nobel laureates who had come to this conclusion, and the Swamiji of what he has said, yes, it has become a reality. It has become a reality. Now, next one, please. You see the great beauty of the thing. All these things he has said either in the Parliament of Religions or at some platforms or some other thing. Now, one day he was sitting at Almora under a peepal tree. It was 1890. And he comes out and he says, what beautiful thing that what he says. Now I see the whole cosmos, the microcosm and macrocosm, one lying inside the other thing. You call it as imagination, you call it as hallucination, you call it as something else. I don't know. Those who are calling them, what to call them. I don't want to use that word on this public platform. Swamiji was able to see very crystal clear, this macrocosm, microcosm are governed by the same principles. And he could see the macrocosm in the microcosm very distinctly, very distinctly. I can tell you a very layman example, the banyan tree, the seed of that one. Out of that seed comes a banyan tree. Can you see a banyan tree in a seed of the banyan tree seed? How small it is? And then you take any of your atomic energy, you split your one single atom, you produce so much of energy that can devastate the whole humanity. Now the entire cosmos, the entire energy is existing in that micro thing or not. Yes, this is one of the wonderful examples that I came across through the Swamiji's own words. I just came out of the thing. I see very crystal clear. This is what is nothing but the intuitive mind. This is what the great sages, they have seen intuitively. The whole cosmos, what are the governing principles and all the other things. What a beautiful thing. I don't think there can be a science if I don't know who has to work for how many years and how many Nobel laureates have to come to show that microcosm, macrocosm is in the microcosm. I don't know. I can just only imagine who come to in front of my mind. I can see only the friends like you who can work on such things, who can work on such things. Now with this thing, now we have said whether Swamiji has got the requisite things or not. After saying that yes, he got the requisite things of science, we have seen in physics, biology, and chemistry what intuitively he pronounced as the postulations. They have become the theories and they have become the realities. Would you like to call him as a scientist or not? What are the steps of the science? Of all your thesis of whatever it is, your BTech or MTech or PhD or postdoctoral or the professor, you have a hypothesis, you have some experimentation, you have some results, you have conclusions, and what is the basis for all these things? Hypothesis, postulation. is the most important thing. The concept is the most important thing of the science. Whatever the steps that you follow, the concept is the thing, what they are called the conceptual scientists. These scientists, they don't do experiments. Has Einstein done the experiment? He created a concept. And this concept to become a reality, sometimes it takes 10 years, a decade, or sometimes few decades. This is what exactly has happened in the case of the Swami Vivekananda. My dear friends, I read a little bit loudly. The global trend in individuals in pursuance of science, or for that matter, their chosen field of profession, is to seek more material comforts. Accordingly, the emphasis is laid more on getting identified as a person rather than having a personality, and being an individual as opposed to acquiring the individuality, which is driving the globe to a more Machiavellian society and dry intellectualism. Swamiji used nicely words, intellectual gymnasium of your words with all these things and all. You are mesmerizing. So this dry intellectualism is just dry. You cannot squeeze even a drop of water out of that one. Going to the moon and saying that maybe one drop of water we found, which is enough for the human colony to exist on the moon. Going all the way, saying that one drop is there, which is enough for the whole humanity to go and live the human colonies there. So dry intellectualism will also be like that. My dear friends, don't feel bad when I am saying some of these things, but it is reality. For these things, what is the thing that is what is required? It is reorientation and then redirection. This is what exactly Swamiji has emphasized. And for that one, what is the way? The only way is becoming a holistic personality like him. Can you become that? What we will see. Next slide, please. Here are the beautiful statements. Intuition brings innovation. Innovation leads to creativity. Creativity brings the excellence. To distinguish oneself from the rest, one has to imbibe, nourish, and culture this chain of activities. However, this has taken a backseat because the priorities have changed in the society. But these are all the logical steps that need to be done. This is the reorientation and redirection that what Swamiji was telling. For these things to come, what is the way? What is the methodology? The more likely are we to hear that voice, the intuition which is common to all, the intuition which is of humanity and not of one particular level. That intuition, if we can rise, the reorientation, the redirection is going to come. And then Swamiji, he says, it is nobody's property. It is everyone's property, the intuition. That intuition, how you can rise, that is the question. Next one, please. Of course, some of you are all scientific people. You will ask whether intuition is a science. Can it be cultivated? Can it be implemented? How to integrate into the scientific approach some of these things? I think I'll go a little bit fast at this stage, more or less. I'm coming to under 5-10 minutes, going to have a conclusion of the thing. But before doing that, I gently request the audience, if you have any other questions, please write down on a piece of paper and kindly pass on to me at the end of the thing. I can give some of the answers if I can. Now, whether intuition is a science, the famous Paul Briston of USA, again, one more Nobel laureate, he has done the survey of last 100 years. Now they are coming to the conclusion, all of you know it very well, the left brain is there, right brain is there. Left brain is for reason, logic, and intellect, and right brain is for the creativity. and all your thought processes will take in the left brain, and when they migrate into the right brain, you become a creative man. That's what they are telling. That's what they are telling. How that migration will take place, and how many people are using that right brain? Hardly less than 1%. So, even though one is creative, one is intellectual, one has got the innate power, the man, he is not using that creative right-hand brain, scientifically to speak. What he is confining is always to the left brain, logic, reason, and argument and argument and argument and argument. Argument and counter-argument. Feynman, he has said, what you do, you learn things to unlearn the things. You create things to uncover some other thing, again to find something, a mischievous fellow coming out. So this argumentative left brain is remaining as it is. But the right brain is the creative thing which has not been used, but which has been selectively used by some of the Western scientists. They are the people who became the Nobel laureates. They are the people who became the sages, saints of our ancient Eastern wisdom. They are the great people. Is it there at that time? Yes, I come to you. So, yes, intuition is a science. It cannot be denied. It is a part of the thing. It has become a very major subject for the parapsychology. And this parapsychology is thinking more and more of this intuition. My dear friends, our Indians are very generous. We see always the humanity in front of us. We never wanted to make money, which is useful for the humanity. So the ancient science, they gave very liberally, but people are, which is given free, is not taken or it is not valued at all. But the same thing patented and royalties, you pay. Yes, it is very valuable. It is highly lucrative. That is what. Now this intuition, which has been used for thousands of years by our Eastern scientists, for which the greatest living example or the example is Swami Vivekananda, who has pronounced that one, that intuition, yes, can be developed through Patanjali Yoga. That's what they said. Having yama, niyama, pratyahara, jhana, dharana, and then samadhi. Let us not worry about samadhi. If we go to the samadhi, you will be sleeping and I will also be sleeping. In the normal, loose terminology. But one goes into that samadhi, he only knows the bliss of that one. He only knows the wisdom in that one. For common man, yes, it will be a sleep. So even if I take away up to that one, pratyahara, dhyana, and dharana, if I take that one, if that is cultivated, then what happens? There were scientists, actually some of these things I have not presented, but in the book it has been done. How scientifically it has been created during this period, the whole metabolism, it changes. How orientation of the cells, your body is nothing but molecules. It is nothing but millions, trillions of cells. All these trillions of cells, they have formed the organs or some other thing of your body. So during this jhana, dharana, the cells reorient. How they reorient? Swamiji has said 120 years back, iron pieces are there, they are scattered. But bring one magnet, all these fellows that come and get attracted to this magnet and they align themselves. Similarly, in the body, these cells, these molecules, which are dispersed, which are diffused, which are scattered, which are unutilized, the moment the jhana and dharana is coming, meditation and concentration, they are all realigned. When they are realigned through that pingala, that what is that? Kuda nadi. Now what they are saying, the left brain activates the right brain. When the right brain activates, the intellectuals like you all become. In this direction, I tell again back, now there are books you might have read, Blink, Hunch, and The Tripping Point. Some of these books are coming from the Western society. They are loosely using the word of intuition, blink, hunch. Just like that it comes. What is that comes? How it comes? You just do that what they offer. But you people, you are the inheritors of that ancient wisdom. You are the inheritors of that great mind of property, intellectual property of that intuition. Swami Vivekananda has demonstrated that. Don't believe, my dear friends, of Vedas and Vedantas and all the other things. Don't you believe that Swamiji has walked on this earth? Don't you believe that Swamiji, he has revolutionized this world and all in so many spheres? Yes, you ought to believe. How he has done, why he was able to do, he is nothing but, as I said in the beginning, he was the Siddha Yogi or Patanjali, master of the thing. Next slide, please. Next one. Next. You may ask me, now after telling all these things, can you put for your science? Can you apply for the science for a creative thing? Yes, for that one, what all you need to have is that a very broad canvas of the subject, first initially you should have, and then on a given particular topic, you have to have the meditation or concentration. You need to have. When you are doing that one constantly, a flash of thing will come. But many flash of the things that what they come, people they ignore it. But you have to cultivate a personality to capture that flash. When you capture that flash on a particular thing, that is nothing but the solution, the holistic, the true solution, that what is intuition. That is what is intuition. And then these are all some of the things. And finally, next slide, please. You see the great Rockefeller, who was what he says, ultimately he realizes nothing but concentration. A man who never believed anything other than money, other than billions of dollars. A man who never believed any life other than that Manson life. At the end he says, yes, concentration. Where from these roots have come? These roots have come from Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda. So my dear friends, when that intuition happens for you, the time and space will be lost. You might have experienced yourself. Time will just go like that. And space, it doesn't matter where you are sitting. And if you have that meditation and concentration, but the condition is there. The condition of pure, uncolored, meditative mind. How you can have that pure, uncolored mind? You see the whole world with what? With biased mind, with colored mind. Then how you will get the intuition? I am concentrating, I am meditating, but why it is not happening? The condition is that you have to have the pure, uncolored mind. When once you have that one, you are on Eureka. What is this Eureka? Any Nobel laureate, that what he gets. When DNA was found, when Archimedes has seen the solution, or Newton has seen the apple falling, or J.C. Bose when he has seen the life, or for that matter, anybody, they got the Eureka. Eureka. That Eureka is going to have next. My dear friend, I pose you a question. It is not that I answer for you. Now, after listening, can Swami Vivekananda be called intuitive scientist? Are there any parallels in the annals of history of the science of such people? I quote Srinivasa Ramanujam. For Srinivasa Ramanujam, who was intermediate failure, who was a clerk on the ship, the theorems, the numbers, when he closes the eyes, they dance in front of his eyes. The theorems, they flow just like that. What a theorem intuitively comes for the Ramanujam, for Hardy, it is a hard nut to break it for months and years together. And Ramanujam, even till today, theorems are there which are not solved. And for him, when he closed the eyes, they were dancing. They were dancing. But you may put me a counter argument. whether he has done the meditation, whether he has got the concentration and all the other thing, whether he has followed whatever Swami Vivekananda has done. My dear friends, doubt not, doubt not. Those great souls, Swami Vivekananda, he said one word, take one thing, take that ideal, live in that, dream in that, eat that, the entire life you spent on that one. Then what you will become that. Sridhar Ramanujam, he has taken that theory of numbers, he lived in that, he entire process of whole 24 hours, and the entire life he has given that one. You call it meditation? You don't call it as concentration? Yes, he has got the requisite qualities. Take Tyagaraja, for example. Or like that, if I can keep on going, quoting the examples and all the other thing, should scientific is possible, logic, reason, and intellect, as I was arguing with my logic, to be creative. Not only these three, you have to have the fourth one too. Yes, that is the creative that mind comes. The last question, has the speaker has got any, at least he has people into that one. You may ask whether you have collected all this somewhere, and then put them together, and then whether you have anything, have you peppered in inside that one or not. My dear friends, to stand before you, even if I say 0.0005% of Swami Vivekananda's thing of what intellectual and intuitive, pure personification of the thing which inspired me, has made me to stand in front of you and to say 40 years in the government organization, there were 4 revolutionary things that happened in the subject space optics, the entire world they said they cannot do, Indians cannot do. I am very happy to say, my dear friends, I was instrumental, not because of my hard work, not because of my theories, not because of my experimental work, but it is the intuitive mind that created concepts that today India has become number 1 in the strategic technology from this space. And then in the atmospheric science, where people they say, tomorrow it may rain or may not rain. And the temperature may be like this or may not be like this. From that stage, Chandrayaan, when we are launching, there was a cyclone standing by the side. And then on that day, the atmospheric science for 3 years, 4 years, I was working on that one. What all I did, the miracle is that some of the intuitive things that are taken, most of the people, they have the intuitive knowledge of the atmosphere. Apart from the models and all the other things scientifically, that intuitive feelings are integrated into this atmospheric model. The result is that if you don't launch by so and so T0 time, after 5 minutes, there will be a downpouring. They launched exactly by T0, exactly 5 minutes, there were showers, heavy downpouring showers were there. You call it that the speaker, he was an atmospheric scientist, a person who says that he has done the optics, he has done the atmospheric science. Where from it has come? The roots are that, the inspiration, the insight that Swamiji, what he has shown. And what all that is nothing but, it is Swami Harshanji, he was so nice, kind to tell, Murthy is a student of Swami Vivekananda. I am so happy. None of my degrees, none of my intellectual gymnasiums and all the other things, but a monk calling Murthy is a student of Swami Vivekananda. I am a qualified student of Swami Vivekananda, trying to become a qualified student of Vivekananda. You see the greatness of that great Swamiji. So the speaker, if we talk from here, something, but if we talk from here, yes, that is the only thing. If I could stand for 40 years in the organizations and 40 years of doing the things, what people they said that cannot be, has been done. and stand in front of you. I wanted to share this one. If a transformation has, it is the information. Information is different from the transformation. I got the information, but the transformation has come only because of Swami Vivekananda. And the inspirations that I draw from his scientific investigation, scientific mind, that is the whole truth of that one. I tell you, my dear friends, I tell you. And then Swami, next slide please. Doubt not, my dears, after talking all these things, because what Einstein, he said, there is no logical way to the discovery of elemental law. There is the only way of intuition, which is helped by a feeling of the order lying behind the appearance. The great Einstein himself, he says, if at all any discovery, creative mind has to come, it is the intuition alone. And any of the Nobel laureates, I can tell you, so many people, what they say is that it is the intuitive feeling that I got. But that intuitive feeling, the intuitive science, intuitive creativeness, the yogas, the Upanishads, they are done. And Swami Vivekananda is the personification of the thing, and he told on the powers of the mind, which you might have read already. And then, next slide, please. Next. Would you like to be, yes, wouldn't you like Swami Vivekananda as a role model for your creative minds? Won't you like to have? You need to have a role model. And you are pursuing the science. And you have seen what Swamiji has said and how it became so, a metamorphism it has taken place, a transformation it has taken place globally. Wouldn't you like to have Swami Vivekananda as a role model for you, my dear friends? Doubt not, my dear. There is, if at all, a periodical shift in your thinking that what Swami Vivekananda, he has brought a periodical shift in the thinking of the minds, of combining of the East and West, and then a synthesis of that one, that what he has brought, that has revolutionized the whole thing. There is no doubt such a great personality being a role model for us. So I doubt. Next one, please. Now this is again all the words in summarized in the words of Swami Vivekananda. So at this stage, my dear friends, may he bless you all with this creative power in your chosen fields and be torchbearers for the generations to come. And make the globe a place to live with rejoice. It is my earnest prayer. It is prayer to the invoking the blessings of the Holy Trinity and especially Swamiji. And a person, true representation. Swamiji sitting over here. I offer all these things or this particular feelings of emotions of the things of what I wanted to go and tell to the public at the feet of the Swamiji. Thank you very much. Thank you. One question, what are the ways or means by which we can encourage people to use their intuition and bring out their creativity? The second part of the question, I think answer is there already. I hope, how to bring out their creativity. The creativity, I said already, it is, you have to have a broad canvas of the subject of whatsoever it is, whether it is management, or whether it is medical, or whether it is your science, or so whatsoever it is. Have on a particular topic on which you would like to have the solution, a meditative, concentrated mind. After having that one, when the flash comes, with pure, uncolored mind, have the ability to capture that flash that brings the innovative creativeness that gives the solutions. No doubt about that one. So that is the answer. What are the ways and means by which we can encourage people to use their intuition? If somebody says, I don't want to be creative, what we can do? Some people, they say, I don't want to be creative. Then how I can encourage such persons to become intuitive? I don't know. I leave it to the questioner himself. The other answer also I tell. You can take the horse to a river bed, but can you make the horse to drink it? Or I tell you, one child, before going to the sleep, he went and asked the mother, Ma, you wake me up at midnight and feed me. Why? I'll feel hungry. So you feed me. Then mother, he said, my dear child, I don't need to wake you up. If you feel hungry, automatically you will wake up. So those who want to be creative, automatically they will look for the intuition. My dear friends, no doubt about it. Out of that one, there is no way other than the meditation and concentration. I understand from the teachings of Swamiji that we all have to increase our intellectual capacity by increasing the intuitive power. Now I assure the ideal case that all of us are coming over to the intuitive capability experiments and discoveries grow faster to such an extent that one day anything is found out and science ends. From there, we then have nothing to do. So I think it is all the predetermined for how much we are intuition and how such science will progress. So why should we worry about it now? Oh, what a wonderful question it is. If we do all the things, nothing will be left for the science to do. I can only tell, Purnamada, Purnamidam, I don't want to complete it. If we take out the infinity from infinity, the remaining is infinity. But for a questioner, if infinity is taken from infinity, it is zero. For him it is zero, for me it is infinity. X minus x is equal to zero. So if all science through intuition, if it is done, no science is left, no science. That is one way. But if I take out infinity from infinity, the remaining is infinity. Still infinite science is there for infinite number of people like you. How intuitive scientists are different from remaining scientists? Very interesting thing. How they are different. Somebody went asked the mother, Holy Mother, how a person who has become spiritually evolved person will look like. Mother very gently says, my child, he will not have two horns or something else. He will be so beautiful. He lives in the world, but world doesn't live in him. That's what mother said. Similarly, how intuitive scientists are different from the non-intuitive scientists is that physically there is no difference at all. But intellectually, one is creative, the other one is, I don't say, it is non-creative, because in this cosmos, there is nothing which is not creative. It is so dynamic. It is so dynamic every time it is creative. So what in nutshell is that physically you don't find any difference. But the intuitive minds, I tell you, I put my hand on my heart, I tell at the age of 68 years, are you satisfied at the end of your day? I say, I'm extremely happy because I tasted the fruits of intuition. A little bit. With that little bit fruits of intuition, taste of that one, after spending 40 years at the age of 68 years, I say my life is, I am very happy. Of course, there is much more thing behind that one of the Holy Trinity. That is a difference of that nothing can replace. So the intuitive minds, if they are ignited, Swami Vivekananda, he said in his own words, they will be with full of joy, with full of bliss. those who experience the intuition. And the people who think it is intuition but hallucination, they become mad people. So that is the difference between the intuitive people and non-intuitive people. Respected sir, before reading the further question, I request kindly avoid the words sir. Sir, it is a title given to somebody. I got a title that I am a student of Vivekananda. I don't need anything much beyond that. I am very happy, but I encourage you. Respect is different from expression of what, sir, why unnecessarily? Not necessary. Anyway, but don't get hurt. I appreciate your love and respect, but simultaneously say, please expand on the following you speak. The smallest particle of universe will still consist of the information of the rest of the universe. Thanks. The example that what was given is that the hologram. Hologram, whether it is taken of a particular object, it contains the entire information of that particular object, or for that matter, the universe. You break that hologram into millions of pieces and take one piece out of that one and analyze that. In that millionth piece, you can see the entire information that what contained in the full hologram. Similarly, these are the words of Swami Vivekananda actually. One atom contains the information of the entire universe. I use the words, there are some watchwords are there of Swami Vivekananda. One of the things is that it is manifestation, not creation. This is a watchword for the scientist, which is going to be proved. Slowly it is tending for that consciousness and manifestation. Similarly, in single atom, the entire universe, that what it says, the biologically, I repeated the word that MacLean and Wilmot, what they said is that in that single protoplasm contained, and that of the highest level of the man, the entire process is governed by the same principle. The small single atom and the whole universe are governed by the same principle. When once the principles are same, when once the energy and matter relationships are all condensed into the same, what the entire universe contains is nothing but in the condensed form it is there. And I will leave it to your imagination. Before Big Bang Theory, what was the entire universe contained in that small dot, imaginary dot? In that imaginary dot, the entire universe was there. And who has fathomed that one? For that one, fathomic of that one, that what exactly the problem is coming here. Guru Sri Ramakrishna's story comes. Why a man, he cannot show answers for this sort of thing. The problem is that a salt doll wanted to go and measure the depth of the sea. And salt doll, after going to a certain level, what happens for the salt doll? It merges with the sea. So if you want to measure, go into see the universe in this small, minutest of the atom of the thing, you must become, your consciousness must be arised. And once that consciousness plunges into that one, and you see that one, it is a joy of seeing the universe. But I told you one slide I have showed you of Swami Vivekananda, Almora, 1990. I just came out, I saw the entire macrocosm in the microcosm, that what he said. So this is the answer that what I can offer you at the moment. Thank you. Thank you, my dear friends. My pranams once again to Atma Shraddhanjay Maharaj for he himself coming, and it is a great inspiration for you, Maharaj. It is a great inspiration. And I thank you, my dear beloved friends. I'll wait to hear each one of you becoming much more creative. You are already creative. You are already intelligent. You are becoming much more creative, much more intuitive, much more original in what you are, and make the humanity's life much more peaceful and joyful wherever you are and however you are and whatever you are. take the blessings of the Holy Trinity. Thank you very much once again.
We are very grateful to Dr. Murthy, who enlightened us with his mesmerizing talk. As a token of gift, I invite Ganesh to present him with a set of books. We Vivekananda Study Circle is proud to have Dr. Murthy as our speaker, and we find it a privilege to gift him with a memento, for which I call upon Vivek. Now I call upon Vishwanath to deliver the vote of thanks.
Just before that one, I would like to. This particular talk is the condensed version of one book written, which is under publication, Swami Vivekananda Intuitive Science, with a message from the President of the Ramakrishna Math, Atmasthanji Maharaj, and with a foreword from Swami Harshanji of Bengaluru. That book is going to come out. If you would like to have, you raise the hands, that many copies I will send over here through this Vivekananda Science Center. How many hands? 1, 2. Oh, yes. Yes, I would love to. I'll definitely send. Thank you.
On behalf of Vivekananda Study Circle, we are extremely thankful to Professor T.G.K. Murthy for sharing his findings and opinions and delivering such an enlightening talk on Swami Vivekananda, an intuitive scientist. Our sincere thanks for providing several insights and for transforming our way of thinking to give intuition a higher priority over intellectualism. As a person, we are extremely honored for you for cancelling your prior appointments for this function and for coming all the way to Hyderabad to deliver this lecture, and for your passion for sharing your ideas to the students of IIT Madras. We would also like to thank all the authorities for their support and for CC for their video coverage. And last, we would like to thank all the audience for their attention and for making this event a memorable one. Thank you. And we have one announcement to be made. We have a Sunday class tomorrow, and it is at HSB 333. The topic of the Sunday class is when the heart becomes pure. It's at 9:30 a.m. We shall end the function with prayer.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.